Hello, everybody. This is Chuck Carnevale, co-founder of FastGraphs, the Fundamentals Analyzer software tool, also known by many of you as Mr. Valuation. And what I'm going to do with this video today is I'm going to actually try to cover a couple of birds with one stone. As most of you, certainly all of you that are subscribers to FastGraphs know that we've recently launched our new and improved version of FastGraph in beta form. Now, that's very, very important because this is clearly a superior tool to the already superior tool that we had previously. And, we did launch it in beta, which means it's still a work in progress. Most of it is functioning as it's expected, but there are some bugs. Our development team is rapidly fixing those bugs. We've had a lot of issues, for example, with some portfolios. Most of those are functioning properly now, and we've got a whole laundry list, thanks to you, our valued subscribers, where you've illustrated or alerted us to some of the issues that were going on. But I want you to understand this is beta. Now, why did we launch it in beta? I want to make a few comments about that. I will say that my team really wanted to wait and get everything working 100% before we launched. I felt differently, and so I kind of encouraged the team, and you might even argue forced the team. So if you have any complaints about launching it in beta, bring those complaints to me. Our developer team would have liked to have kept it in, development for another month or two. But I felt it was important to get this tool in your hands because a lot of people consider the process of researching stocks a mundane and arduous task. And Lord knows I hated researching stocks. Nothing, really did not appeal to me any less than poring over a bunch of financial statements and spreadsheets and trying to figure out what are going on in stocks. So many years ago, I developed the FastGraphs Fundamentals Analyzer software tool, where I organized and presented essential fundamentals at a glance to try to make the research process easier and more efficient, more effective. And, even though researching stocks is an arduous task, like any task or job, if you have the right tool, the job's obviously a lot easier to accomplish than it is without the right tools. And a segue to that would be that a picture's worth 1,000 words. And one of the things that I think is so important about FastGraphs is you can instantly look at a company and determine whether or not, A, you're interested in it from a standpoint of its operating history, B, whether you're interested in it or not from a standpoint of its current valuation. And the other side of it is, rather than wasting hours and going to numerous sources, we tried to give you this one spot where you could really look and determine whether or not a stock was worthy of your time and effort in researching it. So what I'm going to do as a secondary benefit with today's video, I'm going to present 10 stocks that I consider attractively valued. These are primarily total return opportunities, although there is some dividend income involved with many of them. Some brand new, some have been paying dividends for a long period of time. But what I really want to do by doing that simultaneously is show you just how easily and effectively you can research stocks. I consider this the easiest way to research stocks that there is. And I'll try to illustrate it as I go through the video. So let's go ahead and get into the FastGraphs and let's look at it. Now, the primary reason I'm doing this video is to orient you to the new tool and how the new tool functions, how effectively it functions, how quickly it functions, etc. Because the key here is I can look at a company and go through things very, very quickly. So I want to do an orientation of the tool. Now, number one is you've got the symbol box up here where you simply type in the symbol. You can just simply type in a symbol here. It'll give you a pop-up of it. I'm looking at Ameriprise here. You'll immediately bring Ameriprise up. And I'm using the adjusted operating earnings. You can select your metrics in this box here. And as you can see, you have several earnings metrics, cash flow metrics, and then other metrics such as EBITDA, EBIT, and sales. And we've got really some interesting plans for some additional metrics here, including hopefully the return of things like owner's earnings and others that we've had on there. Enterprise value to EBITDA we're working on. So this is going to be, again, even though this is a beta version, and even if it was 100% functioning perfectly, and again, it's about 99% right now, we would still be working to add you more features. But what I also want you to do is just get an orientation of where the functionality are. Here you've got, tabs. I'm going to be focusing primarily on the forecasting graphs in today's video, but you also have performance graphs, forecasting, analyst scorecard, transactions. You can access those things right from here. You've got your portfolio selection if you've created portfolios. If you're a premium version, you've got pre-selected portfolios. If you also have the ability to make as many portfolios as you want, and you can access those right there in this drop down. Once you have accessed a portfolio, I'm calling this one Easy Research that I've created today. These will be the 10 stocks that I'll be covering in this video, going through them very quickly. You can, hit this drop down and move from one to the next, or just use your arrows and go back and forth. Another feature of the historical graph is this settings tab here. You can, if you're calculating performance, for example, if you're doing a performance calculation, the pop-up automatically reverts to a $10,000 investment, and it calculates what the investment would be over whatever period of time you're measuring based on 10,000. If you have a specific amount of money invested, you can input that here. You can also add additional valuation lines to the graph in this box. And then you can also look at the stock split and spin-off adjusted, split adjusted, or unadjusted. And that's something that's, very important if you're looking at companies that have had spin-offs, for example. And so you can see those in the box. Now, we also have the ability to draw logarithmic graphs in this function, where you can draw the graphs logarithmically. And you also will have the ability to reinvest your dividends. Right now, that feature is missing on the graph, but we will be bringing that. We're actually, a team's working on that now, and we'll have that shortly for you. So this is the basic, fast graph navigation. You've got your fast facts, which gives you your price and your dividend yield and your all-important earnings yield. The blended PE, which is using past, present, and the next closest forecast. It's not trailing 12 months. It's not totally future. We consider that to be the best valuation. And it also allows you to see these lines, as extended lines. Then you go into the graph key, you've got the growth rate. And what's very interesting here, you can real quickly determine what's happening to a company's earnings growth. Now you can see this is Ameriprise, since it was spun off from American Express, which you can also see back here in September of 2005, has averaged about 12.5% earnings growth. If I shorten the time frame, the earnings growth actually accelerated to 15%. If I shorten it to 7 years, it's up to 18%. This is a very powerful feature of fast graphs, where you can quickly evaluate what's happening to growth. You've got the multiple of the valuation reference lines. In this case, we're looking at a 15 PE for the orange line and a 13 PE for the blue line. The blue line is a trimmed average of how the market has valued the stock over your historical time frame. I want you to notice that number changes. That's a very dynamic feature. This is, again, something, how's the market been valuing it recently? How's it valued at long term? These are quick and easy ways for you to evaluate and look at the company. You go on down, you've got recessions marked in this gray shaded areas here. You've got dividend yield and payout ratio is this white line here, where you can just point to it and it tells you what the dividend yield and the dividend payout ratio was for that time frame. That's only done on an annual basis. But this is a plotting of the dividends, and it's also giving you the dividend payout ratio. And graphically, you can see that, because below this white line is the portion of the total earnings that are being paid out. And you can see, very clearly here, you can see that the dividend payout ratio was about 15%. Here you can see it was a little higher at 24%. But this is also the dividend payout line. Now, at the bottom graph here, this panel here, you can do things like take price off the graph, take the normal PE off the graph. You can take the dividends after they've been paid out off of the graph, and then you can simply rebuild all of those things on this line here. That's often very handy. I often like to look at a stock without having the price on there. Then you've got company info, which gives you the GICS sub-industry code. Here we're looking at asset management and custody, bank, it's the country of origin, the market cap, enterprise value, debt to capital, credit rating. And then these are often overlooked. If you click on this little drop down here, it will give you splits and spin-offs, if any. And for example, I'll give you go to an example. I'll move quickly to AmerisourceBergen. Notice how quickly you can move from one company to the next. Here's AmerisourceBergen that had multiple splits, had 2 for 1 in 99, 2 for 1 in 05, and then 2 for 1 in June of 09. It also had a spinoff in July of 07, so you can see that. And again, you can adjust for those spinoffs or not by using this drop down here, going to the settings bars. You can add to your portfolios with this tab here. And then all importantly, you can click on external links here. So once you've determined that the stock like Amerisource looks like it's undervalued, you can then And some of these require subscription, some of them have, free aspects to them, but you can go through these very quickly and, go to like Google Finance, for example, and get a quote. You can also look for any news or items that were involved on the company. All importantly, you can go directly into the company's website, which offers you an enormous amount of research potential as well. All of this immediately from the fast graph. Now, here is a company that's got a very consistent operating history with, double-digit growth rate. And as you can see, when I bring the price into the graph, the orange line represents intrinsic value. It's trading below its intrinsic value. I can quickly go to Ameriprise. It's also trading below its intrinsic value, but trading more or less in line with its normal PE. I can see a little more cyclicality here when I look at Ameriprise, but I consider it very attractive. Borg-Warner has a lot of cyclicality. You can see that they eliminated their dividend coming out of the Great Recession. You can see how the business performed in the recession of 2000, the recession of 01, and then also how it performed during the flash crash of the pandemic, I like to call it. You can see how quickly the stock price has recovered. And once again, you can, shorten these time frames and see different rates of growth. By the way, you also have this scroll bar here where you can go in and look at growth rates for middle time frames of the graphic as well. All right, so there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of power associated with this tool. But Borg-Warner is a cyclical stock, but it looks very attractive with some good growth potential going forward. Here's Crown Cork and Seal. Now, very quickly, by just looking at this graph, you can see that this has been a growth stock. This is metal and glass containers. Cans, soft drink cans are one of their big businesses, and that's something that's been growing very nicely for the business. So you can go in here and learn about the companies. Once again, I don't want to underestimate how quickly you can research the stocks, but you can also just instantly see that they've just instituted a dividend. You can see that by the light green shaded area and the white line on the graph. But historically, this has been purely a growth stock. Once again, you see that instantly by looking at the fast graph. Going on, here's Cigna. Once again, you see a company that just started paying a dividend. Otherwise, it's been a growth stock with, double-digit earnings growth. And again, I can quickly go through here and look at the company from the standpoint of, what's happening to its growth rates, et cetera. Another example here is CVS, and you can see how CVS has been recovering during the issue of the opioid crisis. Companies like CVS got very undervalued. Those things have been settling now. You can see the price moving back to fair value. You can see a period of high overvaluation, but you can also see the consistency of the growth and the rate of change of the growth. And again, you can just change that by clicking these, tabs up here and going from one year to the next. The dynamic power of fast graphs is exceptional and incredible. Here's Fedex. You can see what happened to them during the flash crash. You can see moderate cyclicality, but at the same time, good long-term growth. When you're looking at a stock like Fedex, this is a aerospace and defense company, Huntington Ingalls Industries. You can see that it's really, a pretty cyclical company, but yet a good growth stock at the same time. And you can see how the price reacts to that. You get this instant perspective of what kind of company you're looking at. And again, this one looks attractively valued today. Here's McKesson, very similar to what you saw with CVS. This is a healthcare distributor. Obviously, the opioid crisis brought the valuation down, but you can also see a time when the market was really high on the stock several times, and you always see these reversions to the mean happening. You get this instant perspective by looking at a fast graph. Here's Skyworks Solution, a semiconductor company, a very interesting one in my opinion. It got kind of fully to overvalued, throughout most of this year. It's now returned back to fair value. You see that immediately by looking at the graph, and you also see, what the operating history of the company has been as well as its growth rates. And once again, you can adjust those and see whether growth is accelerating or decelerating, which gives you further insights, into the company. So those are your 10 stocks that I'm looking at here. I also want you to recognize I'm using adjusted operating earnings so far, but you've also got basic earnings and you've got diluted earnings. And when you're looking at a lot of these other websites like Google Finance and so on, oftentimes they're going to be showing you diluted earnings, and that's why you'll see different PE ratios in many cases than you do on the fast graph. Now here, it's very, very close, but remember, we're using a blended PE, and if you look closely here at what you saw in the Google Finance, they're using a PE ratio also. If I went to Yahoo Finance as an example, and I looked up Skyworks solution and got a quote, the fast graphs is taking you to earnings estimates and got a quote here, you would see a PE ratio here, but then you would see they're using trailing 12 months. So those are some of the differences. But the point is, you've got the same metric in fast graphs as you do there. If you look at it from an operating earnings, you get a much different valuation metric. And notice that the operating earnings are more reflective of where the stock price goes. But then you can also look at things like operating cash flows, especially if it's a dividend-paying company. And notice how quickly you can go through. You can look at the all-important free cash flow, which I kind of like free cash flow as a valuation metrics, but more as is the dividend being covered and protected and how efficiently the company's operating. You've got EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. You've got EBIT, and you can, obviously look at EBIT from a standpoint of operating because you're doing it with just earnings before interest and taxes. So just how is the business performing? And then we also have the sales graph. And now looking at price to sales graph here, you can see that in the case of Skyworks, it's trading at a relatively high price to sales. So by going through all these different metrics, you can get a real good flavor for what the stocks you're looking at are like, how they're performing. And you don't have to rely on just one metric. You can do this very, very quickly. Now, in future tutorials, I'll be looking at things like the performance reports, the forecasting calculators, the analyst scorecard, which measures how accurate the analysts have been when they've been forecasting. And then you also have this transaction tab. Now, you've got many, many other features of fast graphs that I'm not covering in this video. You've got the financial underlying numbers graphs where you can see financial statements. We've got big plans for this part of the tool. Then you've also got your portfolio section here, where if you're a premium subscriber, you have preloaded portfolios like the S&P or the Dow Jones. So there's a lot of other features I'm going to leave for future videos. This was more of just an orientation to the tool so that you knew where some of these factors are and some of these features are, where you can, look at some of these different aspects. You can see, splits and spinoffs if the company had any. You can adjust them for splits and spinoffs. If not, it's just a very powerful tool. You can immediately go directly into the company's website. And, like here you see the company saying that supply chain improvements. So he believes that it's going to rip and roar in 2000. But you can also go into investor services there. You can look at external research sites, access them very quickly. Go into the Wall Street Journal, get a quote. If you're a subscriber, as I am, you can also then go directly into the Wall Street Journal and see what's going on in the marketplace. Excellent sites like Seeking Alpha, Yahoo Finance, Google Finance, where you can get news and information. The whole idea is that with fast graphs, we're helping you research stocks deeper, faster, more effectively, and more efficiently, and hopefully effortlessly, where it's not as arduous as it has been typically in the past. And it can actually be fun because you can learn so much so quickly. A picture is worth 1,000 words, in my opinion. Anyway, this has been Chuck Carnevale, just showing you some 10 examples of stocks that I think look very attractive here if you're interested in total return. But I also wanted to just show you the features that the fast graph fundamental software tool provided, looking at simply the historical graph. That was the focal point of this video. I'll be doing a lot more tutorials in the future on some of the other aspects of the tool. And I'll even be doing a more in-depth review of how to use a tool like this tool. Here was just an orientation video more than it was anything else, but I'll be doing, more advanced tutorials on even how to use the historical graphs in future videos. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, ring the bell, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and you obviously, hopefully have seen enough today that you might want to take a closer look and try our free trial of fast graphs, because to me, I wouldn't even consider researching stocks without it. And the thing is, I can research stocks so quickly and so effortlessly with this tool. I just really don't know how people that don't have this tool can even think about buying stocks. Of course, I'm biased. It's Chuck Carnevale saying thanks for watching.